With 24 days to go until the election, Donald Trump has essentially taken the lead in all 7 swing states. Just a month ago, he was behind in nearly every single one of them, but now, at the perfect moment, the former president is surging to new heights. Polymarket's election forecast has Trump at a 55% chance to win, his highest odds since early August. And so in this video, we'll be taking a look at all the new polling data that has put Trump squarely ahead and dive into what this actually will mean for the election early next month. And so on the map, I've filled in all of the solid states, but there are going to be a few additional states that we're going to eliminate from consideration. These states are going to be more competitive, but they simply are not going to sway the election one way or the other. Ultimately, it is going to come down to a group of 7 states that will actually decide who the next president is going to be. So really, even though there are 50 states, only 7 wield real power. And those 7 states are Nevada, Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia. And today, Trump leads in virtually every single one of them. And now to dive deeper into each of these individual races, we're going to begin down in the Sun Belt and then move our way up to the Midwest. So starting in Nevada, Donald Trump has taken a 0.2% lead after the most recent Wall Street Journal poll had him ahead by 6. And if you look at the graph, Kamala Harris has actually been ahead in Nevada since the end of August. But just yesterday, Trump has officially retaken the lead. And his lead is pretty indicative of what's actually going to happen in Nevada next month. There's no doubt that the state is going to be close, but Trump is on track for a narrow victory, although I personally have him winning the state by around 1 to 2 points. I mean, just look at the polling from 2020. Joe Biden led by 5.3%. He was supposed to win by nearly a likely margin. Now, ultimately, he wasn't able to do that. He only won Nevada by 2.4, and today it is very likely the polls are once again underestimating support for the former president. According to the betting markets, Nevada has been extremely competitive over the last 2 months, with Trump and Harris neck and neck. Today, the vice president has a very narrow lead with a 51% chance of winning compared to Trump's 49%. But this is basically a statistical tie, as there's virtually no difference between a 51 and a 49% chance. And while I do agree that Nevada is going to be close, I do have Trump as the slight favorite. I agree with the polling average here. I think Trump can win by anywhere up to 2 percentage points, and so on our map, the silver state is going to be tilt red. Now, this would be a huge victory for the GOP, as they have never won Nevada, going all the way back to 2004. This was the last time that Nevada voted red, and it was, of course, in favor of George W. Bush. However, ultimately, Nevada's probably not going to decide this election. It only has 6 electoral votes, so there's no realistic scenario where either Harris or Trump actually need to win Nevada in order to secure 270. However, neighboring Arizona is going to be very consequential. Donald Trump must win this state if he wants to have a shot at winning the presidency. Now, unfortunately for him, this was actually a state that went to Biden in the last election. He won it by 0.31. But the good news for Trump is that today he has taken a commanding lead in the polling average. He's ahead by 1%, with a vast majority of the recent polls showing him on track to win. Arizona barely ever favored Harris. It was a very short period of time where she led in the polling average. This is during the Democratic convention, but ever since then, Trump has taken a solid lead. He's been ahead consistently by around 1 to 2%. And of course, that's more than enough for him to win the state. Just look at the 2020 polling. Joe Biden was on track to win by 2.6. Yet another example of polling constantly overestimating Democratic support, because ultimately, Joe Biden carried Arizona by less than a third of 1%. The betting markets also have Trump in a very good place. Trump has been ahead throughout the entirety of the election cycle, whether it was against Joe Biden or now Kamala Harris. Basically, since Harris peaked during the Democratic convention, Trump's lead has only been growing. In fact, Trump is doing just as well as he was before Joe Biden dropped out. So Democrats went through all the trouble of replacing the nominee at the top of their ticket, and their new candidate, of course, being Kamala Harris, isn't even performing any better than Joe Biden was before he left the race. And so if Kamala Harris loses, Democrats will probably see replacing Biden as a big mistake, despite how flawed he was as a candidate, mainly because of his age. And so Arizona on our map is going to be lean red. I see Trump winning it by just over a 2% margin. This is going to be the second flip on the map so far in favor of the former president. Moving on across the country now, and we find ourselves in Georgia, where Donald Trump leads by 0.5% in the polling average. In fact, out of all 9 of the most recent polls from the Peach State, Harris is ahead in just 2 of them. And Trump has been ahead in Georgia for quite a while now, with his lead generally growing. Kamala Harris was ahead in early September, but of course that is no longer the case. There's no doubt that Trump is going to win Georgia. Fundamentally, the state is still more Republican than it is Democratic. That's why Brian Kemp won his re-election as governor by a likely margin back in 2022. Now, obviously, the presidential race is going to be closer, but Trump can definitely pull off a 2-point win, considering he won the state by 5 points just 8 years ago. Now, in 2020, the polls were actually relatively accurate in Georgia. Out of all the swing states, the polling was the best here. Joe Biden led by 1.2% on election day. He eventually won the state by 0.24. It was the closest state of the entire election, and if polling is correct again, it will have Trump on track to win it this time around. According to the betting markets, Trump's lead has also been growing since the Democratic convention. He now has a 64% chance of winning, nearly a 2-in-3 chance, and he's basically doing as well as he was right before the first Biden-Trump debate that basically knocked Biden out of the race. And so Georgia is also going to be a lean state, with Trump on track to make a third flip. Before we continue, over 75% of you guys are not subscribed, so please take the time to subscribe right now for more content like this leading up to the election in November. And join my Discord server to chat with me personally, link in the description below. However, North Carolina is not going to be a flip, even if Trump does win it, as this is the only swing state that voted for the former president in both 2016 and 2020. And today, Trump is on track to win by 0.5%, according to the polling average. In fact, out of all 8 of the most recent polls, Trump leads in 7 of them, with the other one being a tie. And looking at the graph, Trump has been ahead throughout the entirety of the year. There was one point where Harris and Trump were separated by just 0.1%, but Trump's lead has grown since then. And so there's no doubt that the former president is the clear favorite in the Tar Heel state. Just look at polling from 2020. Joe Biden led throughout the entirety of the election cycle. On election day, he led by 1.8%, but ultimately he lost the state, and he lost it by a 1.3% margin. So the polling here underestimated Trump by 3%. And that is why the betting markets have Trump as the clear favorite. He has a 63% chance of winning compared to Harris's 38%. And Trump honestly would be in a much better position if it wasn't for Mark Robinson, who is the gubernatorial candidate on the Republican side. And so his governor's race has been an absolute disaster. He's been hit by scandal after scandal, and he is going to hurt Republicans in the state, but probably not enough to cause Trump to lose the state at the top of the ticket. And so North Carolina is on track to remain red. I have him winning the state by just over 2%, so improving off of his 2020 margin. So North Carolina is also going to be lean red on our map. And so now, with just 3 states remaining, Trump is at 268 electoral votes, just 2 away from the presidency, which means that we have 3 more competitive states left. Trump can win any one of them and get over the finish line. In fact, he'd also lose Nevada and then win any of these states and still be able to get over 270. So basically, based on the polling right now, as well as my personal projections, Trump is on track to sweep in the Sun Belt, and in the Midwest, we're probably going to see something similar. We'll begin in Pennsylvania, which is likely to be the state that gets either candidate over 270 electoral votes. Today, Donald Trump holds a 0.1% lead. He leads in a majority of the recent polls, and looking at the graph, the Keystone State has always been competitive, even when it was just between Biden and Trump, and now with Harris in the race, things are still very competitive. However, with just less than a month to go, Trump has taken the lead in a very optimal time. Looking at the polling from 2020, Joe Biden led by nearly 5 points, and this is why you'll understand that a 0.1% lead for Trump is very good news for the former president, as of course, despite leading by nearly a likely margin, Joe Biden only carried Pennsylvania in the end by 1.2%. Betting markets also have Trump as the favorite. He currently has a 54% chance of winning compared to Harris's 47. Trump's lead has basically been the largest it's been, going all the way back to the end of July. If Trump wins Pennsylvania, the election is basically over. He's going to lock Kamala Harris out. And so right now I have Pennsylvania as the last lean state on the map. And the reason why Pennsylvania is so significant, because even if Trump loses Nevada, which is not the most unlikely thing in the world, but if he also loses Arizona, which is definitely more unlikely, but let's just say hypothetically the polls totally miss here, if Arizona goes blue, Trump will still be able to get to 270 electoral votes, with just Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia, 3 states where I currently have the former president winning by at least 2 points. Moving on to Michigan, this has probably been the biggest surprise because in 2020, Michigan was the most liberal swing state. Biden won it by 2.8. He didn't win any of the other swing states by larger margins. And so Michigan has been the most liberal for quite a while now. But today, Trump actually leads by 0.9%. That's nearly a 1-point lead. And looking at the polling average, Harris took the lead very quickly in Michigan right after she entered the race because Michigan generally does lean to the left. But now she's lost the lead even here in the Wolverine state, and this basically guarantees a disastrous finish for the vice president. I mean, looking at polling from 2020, Joe Biden was supposed to win Michigan by 7.9%. He ultimately won it by 2.8. I mean, that is a huge miscalculation. And today, with Trump actually leading, with the polls here always underestimating him, he is in a very strong position to flip Michigan and win it for a second time after he carried it by just 0.2 back in 2016. The betting markets also show a significant shift as Kamala Harris's odds have essentially fallen off of a cliff. She was at a 68% chance of winning. That was a 2-in-3 chance just 2 weeks ago. But since then, her campaign has absolutely come crashing down. She is now not even the favorite. Donald Trump is on track to win Michigan with a 51% chance at victory. And there's no doubt that Michigan's going to be close. It does have a long history of voting for Democrats, and so on the map, I do have it going to Trump, but only by a tilt margin. If Kamala Harris can't win Michigan, it is going to be extremely likely that she loses every other swing state. There's going to be no doubt that Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, all these states are going to be lean red. Nevada's probably going to flip as well. So a loss in Michigan would be devastating for Kamala Harris. But right now, that is what we're on track to see as Trump's position in this election just keeps getting better and better. And finally, in Wisconsin, the polling average has some catching up to do. Kamala Harris still maintains a narrow 0.3% lead, but she's going to lose that lead very soon. And just think about it, if Trump can win Michigan and Pennsylvania, there's no doubt he is also going to capture Wisconsin. The only reason why Harris is doing slightly better here is because she chose Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, to be her running mate, and of course, Wisconsin does border Minnesota. However, it is unlikely that Wisconsin is going to vote differently from its 2 upper Midwestern neighbors, as the last time that Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania didn't all vote for the same candidate was back in 1988. On top of that, there's been no state where polling has overestimated Democrats more than in Wisconsin. Joe Biden was supposed to win the state by 8.4%. He eventually won it by 0.63. I mean, it really is hard to believe that the data had Biden winning this by a likely margin, nearly double digits, but eventually he wins it by a smaller margin than Trump won Wisconsin by in 2016 when he became the first Republican to win it in nearly 30 years. And so there's no doubt that Wisconsin is going to be tilt red on the map. According to the betting markets, we essentially have a statistical tie once again. Harris was at a 60% chance just 2 weeks ago. She's come crashing down just like she did in Michigan, and so Wisconsin, the final state on the map, is going to go to Trump by a narrow margin. And so based purely on the polling data, Trump is on track to win 6 of 7 swing states, but if you also factor in previous polling errors, he's easily going to win all of them. It's going to be a Trump sweep across the board in terms of the battlegrounds. He's on track to win at least 312 electoral votes. He could even make with Minnesota and Virginia competitive as this month goes on, as he continues to climb higher and higher in the polls. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe right now for more content like this leading up to the election in November, and follow me on Twitter for daily political updates. Link in the description below.